Nathan, welcome back to the show, brother, and to the official start of season 4.
Season 4.
I know, man, it's crazy. It's been
How
what a
did this
journey.
happen so quickly?
I know, man. It's been, I think, 9 months, no, 10
Yeah,
months since I
it
launched the
had. Yeah,
podcast.
it's amazing.
Insane, man, and all with your help as well.
Oh, he says as he sips his cup of peppermint tea because he's an old man. No, that's amazing. Wow, I mean, what a journey we've been on.
Exactly, and I feel like it's serendipitous in a weird way. The topic we've decided to settle on is called knowing when to throw in the tile, but we're just starting season 4 and
Never.
continuing with it. Quite the
Yeah,
irony. Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, the reason I wanted to chat about this and to get your perspective on it was because in a recent chat I had with some good friends of mine, the question was posed to us as a group. What was the biggest lesson or lessons you learned between the ages of 13 and 23? And how did this affect your life, both positively and negatively?
Wow.
And yeah, it was a powerful question, man. So when it came to me, I simply said it was a very long answer, but I'm going to put it into as short an answer as I can in the interests of time. I essentially learned how to tactically give up, how to knowing when the certain course of action was no longer taking me in the direction I wanted to go to achieve my overall aim. And
Yeah.
there was sometimes, certainly when I was younger, in my early 20s, late teens, early 20s, that it just felt like giving up. But other avenues opened up. And then as I got older and now in my late 20s, I'm much more comfortable recognizing that in my overall aim, it's okay to give up, but it's not okay to give up on the overall objective, the overall aim. So if I've set myself a goal, so for example, by Christmas, I want to open my first business. There are several ways to do that. And I have changed tack a few times in that regard. But I haven't given up on the overall goal of opening up a business, but I've given up certain paths because I've realized that there's either easier or more efficient ways to do it. And the reason I really want to chat about this is because you see it over and over and over again in inspirational YouTube videos. They always that really passionate gentleman or woman in the video saying, never give up, never give up. And, it's, and while it feels nice and it maybe gives you a temporary kick up the ass to go after something you really want, it's quite vague, and it's also perhaps not the most useful advice. Great for a YouTube video, not great for reality. Because in my there's two sides of the coin, in my opinion, in that I believe it was Albert Einstein said that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. But then on the flip side of that coin, what I really like as a philosophy and a quote is something that General Patton from World War II said. He said on the question of retreating, he said, "We are not retreating; we are just advancing in a different direction," which I really liked because when you give up, it does feel like a temporary defeat, a retreat. But but from my opinion, it's taking that step back, getting that bird's eye view of the situation and going, okay, that potential path for whatever reason is no longer suitable or it's the least efficient. What's the new direction we can take to achieve our goal and our aims? But that's just my hopefully quick, pithy answer to that question as a whole. What's your perspective on it?
I think it's a really good topic to discuss, especially if we're talking about sort of the wisdom that we've learned to pass on to young people who are those who are coming up behind us. I think knowing when to quit a particular course of action or something is actually really is a good skill to have. And like we said with the sort of the hearts and minds, I don't know what you call it, videos off YouTube. And, your listeners and you know me well enough now to know that I'm a fully paid up card carrying Bible basher. And those kind of videos are actually, those kinds of talks quite prevalent now in some corners of the church, where it's all about, going and getting your dream and not giving up because, God wants you to have your dreams. But I don't necessarily think I agree with that, because, you know, we can't all have our dreams, you know?
Yeah.
And so, and I suppose it also depends on what your dream is, you know, if you, you know, and whether it's good or noble or righteous, you know. So I suppose there's those kinds of ways of looking at it there. But I think when we're looking at that, I think, you know, if you're trying to, like you're saying, trying to set up your own business, if your goal is to establish, you know, to be self-employed, to be generating your own income, and you pursue a certain avenue and it's not working, it's not going ahead, then there's, you know, yeah, I think that pattern quote is right. We're advancing in a different direction. It's not quitting, it's just quitting that path to, you know, the goal is still in sight, but rather than going at it, I don't know, rather than going at it in a straight line, now you're going at it in a sort of a zigzag to get to that. You know, is there a way of bypassing this issue that doesn't compromise you as a person, your integrity and those kinds of things, but will achieve the goal? And I think, you know, it kind of goes back to some of the conversations we've had before about having the patience to get to your goal as well, you know,
Yeah.
and not having that kind of Instagram, Pinterest idea of how your goal is going to look, without realizing that there's going to be a lot of mess before you get to the pretty.
I like that. Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
I think that something, a harsh truth that a lot of kids need to realize, you know, especially, you know, people who've just turned 18 or coming out of university. I hate to break it to you, but even your wildest dreams, even your most ambitious plans to give you exactly the life you want requires hard work.
Yeah.
Like hard work is inevitable, but you have to learn that very fine line between um a good example I heard was, it was on the Art of Manliness podcast from a Navy SEAL called Mark Devine, I believe his name was, and basically they were discussing
Strong name.
what are the attributes that are most essential for success. And the two he picked to talk about in particular, of which I think there's like 10, but he chose to talk about two on this particular podcast episode, and that was perseverance and adaptability. And he said that in certain times it's good to have exclusively one and not the other, and in other times it's nice to have both. So for example, perseverance would be something along the lines of, an example I'll give is that I've been learning to do firefighting at sea this week. And as you'll know,
A
Nathan,
vital
obviously
skill.
a very vital skill, when, especially at sea, because no one's coming to save you. Um, so this, having been in the maritime industry, you'll know yourself that age-old thing: continuous aggressive attack on the fire. There is perseverance. There is no adaptability. You just persevere, putting as much water or foam or whatever you need to do onto that fire to put it out.
Well, it's either that fire goes out or you go out, isn't it? That's it.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. You know, the ship is your best life raft. Let's not go to the emergency one.
Yeah.
So agreed. That's a skill where perseverance is key. However, the other example, that was the example I thought of, but the example he gave in regards to adaptability was a mechanic. So the mechanic goes around the car and he's trying to figure out what's going wrong, and he tries this and he tries that. And if it's obvious that this isn't the problem, he doesn't persevere on this particular route. He goes, okay, through logical problem analysis and experience, he goes, right, well, okay, let's adapt. It's clearly not this. It's clearly not that. I know it could be this, like the engine's not starting, so it could be the battery. Okay, let's pursue electrical. Okay, it doesn't appear to be electrical. Let's give up on that avenue. Let's adapt and go to purely mechanical. Okay, what's mechanically is not happening that this engine is not starting, and break it down to the minutia until you get to the problem. So that was a key of adaptability. But then there are obviously some situations that do require that fine balance between adaptability and perseverance. And I thought those two skills or something we can definitely talk about at length for this episode.
Mm.
But a good example that you actually made me think of just when you were speaking, I instantly thought of Hannibal and his war with Rome.
Yes,
I
yes.
can't remember if it was the second Carthaginian War or the first. There was lots of wars, but there was obviously that very famous military example of Hannibal wanting to bring Rome to its knees. That was the ultimate goal. But there were several ways to do it. He decided to go through a very odd route of going through the mountains, which had never been done before and was deemed physically impossible. He lost 50% of his army in the process, granted, which was pretty rubbish. But he ended up getting through the mountains, surprising
Mm.
Rome, catching them with their pants down, and they lost the big battle that came to it, and they were thoroughly pooing in their pants. But
Yeah.
I think that's an example of giving up on the traditional routes to get somewhere and trying something new. There was plenty of, but this is example as well. When you've lost half your guys, there's going to be
Mm.
a lot of temptation to throw the towel in and go, okay, enough's enough. Is it
Yeah.
really worth it? But obviously, with it, he knew he had that ultimate goal in mind, and he went, no, now is not the time to throw the towel in. Perseverance is key. This is when perseverance is key.
Yeah.
And it's just when you were talking there with your previous conversation, I instantly thought, yeah, that reminds me of Hannibal actually. Now,
Mm.
there's plenty of other very good examples of perseverance and adaptability and not throwing the towel in. Another one that instantly jumps to mind is when Britain refused to cower to the Nazis, and we were fighting the beaches and all that.
Mm.
It would have been very easy to throw the towel in and go, okay, we're literally by ourselves. All of Europe has fallen to this fascistic regime. It would have been very easy to sue for peace and come to some sort of diplomatic term, even though we wouldn't have liked it. But
Mm.
no, we're not going to throw in the towel. We're going to stand up for what's decent and what's right, and we're not going to do business with these horrific people. So that's just my take on
So,
that particular bit. But what do you think?
I think that I'm going to do a politicians thing now, which is really not helpful. I think those are two, obviously, great examples, but they're kind of militaristic, aren't they? And
They are.
to a certain degree, if you're thinking about military, and I'm going to be very careful how I say this, you can kind of afford a certain amount of belligerence, so long as you've still got bullets or arrows. You can be belligerent. And I think there was with Hannibal, I mean, it was supreme confidence in his own ability to understand how a battlefield worked. And there was a certain level of sort of, stubborn belligerence. I am going to go through this, and I'm going to deal with Rome. And then I suppose that kind of that same kind of pugilistic tenacity is what got us through World War II, and as a nation, and then eventually as the world, as everyone sort of joined in and dealt with the, as you said, that those fascist regimes, but all the while in those, in that bit, as if you like, there was kind of that sort of dogged belligerence of the war cabinet and of the generals and air marshals and admirals who were all defiant in the face of this enemy. Also running alongside that, though, was it was all the sneaky stuff that Britain was trying to do to achieve different ends, including inventing people who never even existed and creating backstories for them and papers and things like that, and allowing bodies to be washed up on the coast of France that had papers that sounded like it was this person that they'd been talking about on the airwaves, so that people, the Nazis, believed that this guy was real.
Yeah. Operation Mincemeat, that wasn't it? I believe.
Yeah. And so you've got all these other things where, so there's it was kind of, it was almost like the right hook was just just pure dogged determination, belligerence, but the left hook was something sneakier and prepared to try anything that would achieve the end, anything that would achieve the end, coming from the other side. And I think whilst it's great to like look back at history and see these things, it's kind of like, how does the example of what Britain did to endure World War II and ultimately, with help of allies, become the victors? How does that help you in establishing your first business before Christmas?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
and I think it's great to sort of call on these historical examples of not throwing the towel in, and also historical examples of when people did, just go, no, this isn't the right idea. We're going to back away. We're going to do this tactical withdrawal. But how does that, in terms of like, because we want to give the listeners value and something that they can take away and implement an action.
100%.
And whilst it's very cool to nostalgically look back at, how our ancestors won World War II, it's kind of like, well, how does that help me if I'm at college and I'm wanting to drop a subject, but which one do I throw the towel in on, and which one do I keep? If I'm at university and I don't feel like the course I'm on is getting me anywhere, or I've been applying for 100 jobs a day and not getting anything, when do I throw the towel in? It's what do we glean from those examples to give the listeners something practical to take away?
That's a great question, and I think if I can remember them all, I think
I was just throwing things at you there, wasn't I?
Yeah, no, it's great. I think definitely we need to talk about knowing how to balance perseverance and adaptability. I think we need to talk about your experience with mentoring, because you've mentored plenty of people who have come up against these real life difficult choices. Do I continue with this path, or do I change tack? And thirdly, I think it's more of a statement, and it's kind of a liberating statement, in that I don't want to quote you because I can't exactly remember what you said, but something along the lines of, you can't have it all. You can't have all, every dream. And that's where I think I've fallen down in recent years, a bit like that kid who wants to be an astronaut, a footballer. And, when you're people ask you what you want to do and you list off 4 or 5 jobs, and everybody goes, aye, all right. I'm a very ambitious man. There's lots of things I want to do in life, but I'm growing more comfortable with the fact, and it's quite liberating, that I can't have it all. Like, I am limited with my time and my energy to dedicate to something, maybe 1 or 2 noble pursuits, and to do them well. But I feel like it's definitely worth pursuing, knowing when to balance your perseverance with your adaptability. But but before we talk about that, what's the advice you give to kids when you were mentoring them and they were going through these difficult choices?
Well, I think the first piece of advice I gave them was to set themselves, not to set themselves the precedent of just quitting because something's hard.
Yeah.
Or they're at the minute they're not having fun, they're not enjoying it.
100%.
So there are aspects of whether it's academia or just working or any of those things, where there are parts of it that are fun, that are great, and oddly, when you look back over things, you either only ever remember the really good things, or for some cathartic reason remember like one like weird bad thing that you kind of really focus on, but then laugh at it because you've overcome it, or 1 or 2 bad things that you look at and overcome. But if just because you've turned up to work and your boss has been a little bit aggressive or rude towards you, or a colleague has not been great, or something has gone wrong, or you're at college or university and you're just not feeling it, if you quit, then you've not actually grown, you've not changed, you've not learned anything. All you're doing is setting yourself the precedent of every time something's difficult, you just quit. You just quit. And that doesn't help you grow. It doesn't help you achieve anything. You'll just spend your entire life quitting.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually sometimes I think, you know, we pushing through those barriers of things being not great is actually when change and growth and development come.
100%.
And like everybody who's listening to this podcast has been born, and in order for you to be born, a lot of pain has to happen. And if your mother had quit, you would not have been born.
That's a really powerful concept,
But
actually.
she has to endure a lot of pain, had to endure a lot of pain, um, which is something I will never experience because the Lord blessed me with being a bloke, and so I'll never have to experience that pain. But from what I've been told by friends and by my own mother, it is the most horrendous pain ever, and I am not going to argue that at all. I would never gainsay someone's lived experience, but in order for us to be here, someone had to endure a lot of pain, and they didn't quit.
Yeah.
And so and within reason, I know not everybody has a great relationship with their parents, but I would say a larger percentage, shall we say, their mother is glad that they endured that pain to have their child.
100%.
Because of what the outcome is, that it's you, to your mother, you are the outcome. And that's a great thing. And I think it's the same with, we can put that into that kind of perspective of going, with you trying to birth this company that you want to create, that you want to have this business, you're going to have to endure some pain, and it's going to be difficult, and it's going to hurt, and you're going to want to quit. But actually it's, you push through that bit. I mean, the end result is you have your own business.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just like a child, it may not be exactly what you wanted, and I've been tongue in cheek slightly here. You may have wanted a girl company, but what's been born is a boy company, but you will love that business, and you will nurture it, and you will see it grow, and you will put into it, and what you put into it is what you'll get out of it. It's the same, as a parent with a child. And so, but I think because you've put yourself through that pain of and pushed yourself through those barriers, then once you get out the other side, what you nurture, what you grow, you are more committed to because of the pain, because of what you had to endure to get to that bit. And I think that if you set yourself that good precedent of saying, I will push through, and in that pushing through, there is a certain amount, obviously that's perseverance, but also there's adaptability within that, isn't there? And so, and I think part of that adaptability is that learning to roll with the punches, is that, and again, I think we're tracking back over some of the stuff that we've spoken about together, me and you, before, is like not taking things personally, which is really difficult when it's something that you're invested in. So say like if it was your business, for example, because I know this, I can speak from experience, because you've sent me messages with, what do you think of this logo, or what do you think of this name, or what do you think of that, and I've said, oh, number one was okay, but number two is a bit pants, I don't like it, or whatever. I can't remember the exact conversation we had, but what I remember was your response was, all right, I'll take that on board. And that was it. So I don't know whether you're taking that personally, or you just like, thank you, I'll take that on board. And I think that's really great, because what you didn't say was, no, you're a knobhead because you disagree with my choice. You didn't take it personally. You weren't aggressive, because you'd asked me for my feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when we, in any of those kind of situations, it's, it is, we're invested in it. We want it to be good, but we can't take it personally if someone doesn't agree with our dream or doesn't like what we're doing. It doesn't mean we quit. It means that we adapt. How do you bring the most amount of people with you? I mean, I know that, like, for example, like again, you with this podcast, you when you started out, your dream was to reach a certain age demographic, and actually, as you've gone on, you've realized that actually a lot of the time that age demographic doesn't always listen to podcasts. It's a different age demographic. And so you've adapted. It's the same, it's still the same concept of passing on wisdom and knowledge and experience, but you've tailored it now to meet the people who are actually listening to your podcast and not just to people who aren't listening, who you were hoping would do.
Yeah.
And you've not taken that personally. You've just gone, all right, okay, well, it's still the same. I'm still a curious Ulsterman, but who am I going to reach instead? Who's actually listening? Right, let's make it for them. And so you have persevered and adapted.
Yeah.
100%. And I think in that, and I'm not trying to butter you up here or anything. I think in that you've shown a strength of character rather than going, oh, do you know what, stuff this, it's not worth the effort, and just throwing the towel in. And I know a part of that is because of your dogged determination, because the conversation we've had lots of times is that most podcasts fail after episode 7, and you were like, well, I'll still be here on episode 47 and I'll see you all. And that kind of dogged determination is what's kept you going, isn't it? Because you're like, I'm not going to be another statistic.
Yeah, damn right. Yeah. With your help, by the way.
Well, what's that? There's an African saying, isn't there? I think
I know exactly the one. Yeah.
Is it,
if you want to go somewhere quick, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
That's not the one I was going for, but I like that one.
Oh, right. Okay.
It takes a village to bring up a child.
Ah, yes.
And so you were saying with my help, it's kind of like, together with all the other guests you've had, reoccurring ones and people who've just been on one-offs, as a village, we've brought up the child that is the Curious Ulsterman.
Oh, that's the podcast concept.
Do you see what I mean? So like you're the head man, you're the guy in charge of the village. But as such, you've been the driving force, but all the rest of us who you've had on, other guests and contributors, we've been your village.
Yeah. That's really interesting.
To help you bring up, your child, that is the Curious Ulsterman, and in that you've shown adaptability, that you've had all kinds of different people on, talking about all kinds of different things, and on weeks where people have quit on you, you've had people booked in to do an interview with. You haven't just gone, oh, stuff it, I'm not going to bother. You've adapted.
Yeah.
Which is incidentally why I was the guest on the dealing with bereavement and not an actual professional.
Very true. You've come to my rescue a few times on this show.
And so I think that there is it's not setting yourself a precedent of quitting. I think it's got to be that, like you were saying before we hit the record button, is that tactical withdrawal, is stepping back and reviewing something, because sometimes just looking at something from a different angle yields a new result. And another bit of advice I used to give the teenagers when I was doing the youth mentoring with my old church, was to have someone who you can verbalize your whatever it is, your issue with, not always to get that person's advice, but sometimes just to say the thing out loud, because sometimes saying the thing out loud rather than in your own head enables your subconscious to work on it differently. I don't understand why, because I'm not clever, but I know that it works because I've used it several times. But also sometimes just to get that person's advice as well. You trust them. They've got your best interests at heart, and that they want to see you succeed. So listen to what they've got to say. You don't have to do it, but just listen anyway, because a different viewpoint, again, gives you a different angle that you're looking at the situation from, which is giving you the adaptability. And that friendship is also giving you the perseverance.
Oh man, that's powerful. Yeah.
And so, it was the same with the, with the I don't want to shamelessly plug, but it was, with the No Wet Fish podcast, you motivated me to go and do it. And I had one idea, and then I spoke to someone else, and that changed the idea.
Yeah.
To what it is now. And but once that new idea came in and it settled, and I was like, yes, this is totally the direction I should be going in. And then persevered
Yeah.
in getting it to being episode 5, as it is now. So miles away from season 4, but but in that it's kind of, it is just overcoming those problems. But don't be afraid to speak, don't be afraid to ask. Even if even if the first 4 people you ask say they don't want to talk to you, find a 5th person. That's another perseverance part. Find someone.
Yeah.
And if you're listening to this podcast and you can't find someone to listen to here, I'm going to stitch Johnny up, send him a message and ask him.
Yes.
Yeah. If he gets a message on his Instagrams or his TikTok account from someone saying, all right, I listened to your podcast, I've got a question, I reckon he'd be thrilled.
Yeah. We see it'll work. It works now because of our very small but consistent listener base, and who knows, a couple of years time we could have several thousand. I'm getting several thousand DMs. What should I do?
That's all right. You just at that point you'll be employing a secretary, so you'll be fine.
But man, yeah, that was a lot of wisdom and a lot of gold. Like, thanks for sharing that, because I feel like I've just benefited from it, even if the listeners don't. But yeah, I feel like though that the overarching theme of what a listener can take away here, especially in the realms of giving up too early, is I feel like it's very important to define your vision, like really sit down and think, what do you want from your life? And until people go, well, I don't know what I want from my life, well, good news, we've done an episode on that, how to decide what to do with your life. Check it out in season 2. But a question I like to ask people is, well, if money was no object, what would you do? And so for me, I know I have in my head, I have a crystal clear vision of what I want from my life. Like by the age of say 40, 45, I know exactly what I want, where I want it, and how I'm going to achieve it, hopefully. Now, and that's crystallized in my head. So on the days like this where I especially after a day of soul destroying PowerPoint, I just cannot be bothered to do the work that requires me to get towards this vision, to achieve this dream. But then I just do it anyway, because I'm not focusing on the task today. I'm focusing on the vision 20, 25 years from now.
Yeah, sure.
And that keeps me going, because I'm looking at the bigger picture rather than the minutia and the daily slog, and I feel like the next big thing to do, especially with what you said at the end, was ask people, verbalize your thoughts, so that you can your subconscious can come out a little bit more, and you can maybe crystallize in your head exactly what you want, or get the advice of people you trust. And good news, we've done an episode on that as well, how to building a team of coach and mentors, again, I think in season 2. So there is that. And I feel like you very in a very articulate way, Nathan, described the difference and how to balance the perseverance versus adaptability. And I don't know if it's worth going over that again, because I think you just so eloquently described it, especially with how you mentored young people. And I don't know about you, Nathan, but I feel like a lot of the time I have perfected the art of giving up literally just before something was about to change for the better. Like, I'm not so bad at it now, but there was a point where like I was like the Picasso of like down to an absolute art on giving up either a few seconds, a few minutes, or a day before like something huge changed. Thankfully, the results still came, but I don't know what it is about this weird life, the universe, if it has a sense of humor. But it is always that point of just before something big happens, you always do like give up or on the verge, and then it just happens. You're like, oh, Thank goodness that wasn't permanent. Do you know
Yeah,
what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah,
It is strange. I mean,
yeah.
so I suppose I think it would be good for the listeners was off the top of your head, do you happen to have an example of when you had to balance perseverance and adaptability, or just keep going with perseverance, or do something adaptable on the fly? Was there a story or a life experience that you can give to the listeners? Because I've got one I can give off the bat as well.
Good question. I suppose like, oh, right off the top of my head, no. I'll need at least 30 more seconds.
Well, just not to put you on the spot,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but obviously, listeners now aware. Obviously, you're a Christian. I'm not, but I'm fully aware of how difficult the Christian life can be. Would you say that persevere? Would you
I
would you
mean,
say it's an endurance? It's perseverance with
I
the
mean,
Christian faith in the good and the bad days.
I perseverance is one of the core teachings. Actually, in the New Testament, you're told to persevere as a Christian.
Yeah,
Um, and it is that there is a certain thing of of just one foot in front of the other, just always moving forwards
yeah,
in it, and it's not always one foot in front of the other in suffering and in pain and like, oh, woe is me, everything is bad. It's just that they're not sitting down and watching the world go by,
yeah,
and idling time away. It's perseverance, it's pushing forwards. And I think sort of like, don't get me wrong, there are times where, it feels mechanical, like you're just going through the motions. Whether it's, doing like what you might call like the basic functions of Christianity, which is just reading the Bible and praying. It just feels very mechanical and like you're just going through the motions. And there are other times where it feels completely amazing and everything's great and like everything is lined up and everything is wonderful. But and in that, that there are um friendships and things like that are that require perseverance. And particularly as a because I still in my new church, I'm on the youth and children's team there doing youth work and Sunday school and all that kind of stuff. And that there are some of those young people who are great and they get it and they get on with it, and then there are some that are just hard work. you
Politely
know
putting
um
it.
and you've got to persevere with them, um even though sometimes it hurts, and even though
Yeah,
sometimes it costs, because you're not doing that thing for yourself. And I suppose that's where the difference between, and it's not because we all have these kind of parts of our life, don't we? There are some things, like for example, like going back to this thing of like your podcast, your business, that is for you. But there'll be some stuff in your life, like you were talking about doing the firefighting training, that's actually for other people.
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, you see. And so like, and so it is like with everything, and but when you know that there's something you're doing is actually for the benefit of someone else, that kind of really doubles down on the idea of not quitting, of persevering. um you know there have been several times where I want, no names, no pack drill, where I've wanted to quit, but I've not allowed myself to, because of people who I love and I
Yeah,
and I want to see them achieve. And so, you just don't quit, and you get them or help them to get to the place where they should be.
yeah,
um and so, yeah, I think there's, obviously, if you want examples of times when that it's been going, when I've been doing that youth work and doing the stuff alongside those young people, um and even in the maritime industry, and people there who were making, and this isn't a, a religious state, just making poor life choices,
yeah,
but persevering with them till they get themselves to a place where they're making good life choices.
yes,
you
100%.
know And that's not being, being a fun sponge or hating on things. It's just recognizing that balance in life, shall we say.
Yeah, 100%. That's really cool, because I know certainly that it must be difficult on some days and obviously easier than others. Um, and I like as well what you said, that it's not all about you, it's about other people. Because often when we give up, there's ramifications um, for for our sphere of influence, so to
Mm,
speak. And I it ties in very well with the example I was going to give, and you already mentioned it. Actually, it was firefighting.
mm,
So on the final exercise, I was on the actual re-entry team. So we had it was a real fire, but it was pretend. It's a simulation. So there is like propane tanks outside, and they simulate just to test your firefighting skill. So, but this fire was in the social area, or the mess deck as it's
mm,
called, and I went down there, realized I had done up my mask far, far too tight, trying to get a face seal. And I mean, this thing was genuinely painful on my face. If you can imagine, like, the firefighter version of like that thing from Alien that slucks onto your face, and it's just like, oh my god, it's the most
yeah.
uncomfortable thing ever.
Mm,
But that I had that going for me. Then there was the heat of the fire, trying to drag this hose. I was also the most experienced person there. I think the next person along had about 1 year's experience in the maritime industry, and the person behind me, who was supposed to be the team leader, had 6 months. So
excellent.
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 And there I am with 11 years. It was obviously there to give them that experience of being a firefighter and a team leader, and I was their water wall, as the firefighting saying goes. So we opened the door, and we start fighting the fire. And as we're fighting the fire, my face mask malfunctions. So like I can't breathe properly in the middle of fighting a fire.
Mm,
And it's the closest I've ever came to sticking my hand up and going, stop the exercise. I was genuinely scared at this point. But then I sort of thought to myself, if I give up now, what are these new guys gonna think if the guy that's supposed to lead them is giving up?
mm,
And you know what I mean? That's in a perfect scenario. If we're actually at sea, I might not have all the help I had there. The situation could be genuinely dire. There could be casualties. There could be,
mm,
the world could be a very horrible place at that moment in time. And if I just threw my hands up and go, oh, I can't do it. But I persevered, and I persevered, and I persevered. And, a win and a learn from that particular scenario was I'm a lot mentally tougher than I thought I was, because it's all very well and good. You're expecting hard work, but I wasn't expecting my mask to malfunction. I wasn't expecting for to be saddled, that's the wrong word, paired up with um people who are completely new and looking to me every few seconds to make sure they're doing their jobs correctly while I'm trying to
yes.
make sure I'm doing my job correctly. And it was
Yes.
great. They were a great bunch of guys. Haven't got a bad word to say about them. But obviously it was quite mentally stressful. But it just goes to show that I'm a lot more mentally tougher than I thought I was, especially with perseverance. And I think we all are. I don't think we
Mm,
all give ourselves enough credit in
yeah.
that regard. But
Yeah.
that was definitely like a win and a learn for me. I learned that that was with being 28 years old. I knew in that moment from life experience that perseverance is what's needed right now. Not adaptability. Adapt to the fire, adapt to the new situation certainly, but more than not, just solid perseverance, dogged perseverance through this really horrible
Mm,
time where I'm really uncomfortable, I'm really hot, I'm really tired. My the only way I can breathe is malfunctioning a little bit. I can still breathe, but it's not as easy as it was before. It was just downright horrible. And in the end, we got through. It was fine. But that for me was a key moment, I think, in my year. If I'm honest, that was
yeah.
like
Yeah.
a highlight to go, yeah, that was pretty hellish, and I managed to get through it. Um,
Mm,
so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, but I think if we had to sum all of this up, I think that the thing, the three things potentially out of four, if you can think of it, is to define your vision, because your
yeah.
vision is what's going to get you through the daily slog, and make sure it's,
Absolutely. Yeah.
define your vision, define what you want to do with your life, to find those mentors and coaches who are going to help you through that daily slog, or at least help crystallize that vision in your head,
Mm.
and then learn the balance between perseverance and adaptability
Yeah.
in that daily, weekly, yearly slog. And I make
Mm.
that sound bad. I have said this before in the podcast, learn to enjoy the journey rather than the pure end result. Because I think people always think that they're going to get to the end result and they're going to feel amazing. And it's like, oh, was that it? I think if people like learn to enjoy the journey
Yeah.
rather than craving that end result and that dopamine rush,
Yeah.
something that really challenged me recently was, it's all about establishing new habits with the with wanting to get to your goals, and habits takes perseverance, and sometimes you have to adapt those habits.
Yeah.
But something that really challenged me and called me out on my own BS, if I'm honest, is that habits are all well and good, but if you truly want to change to get to your goal, it's going to require an actual identity change. You're going to have to change your identity from the person who likes to sit and play video games all day and watch TV and make excuses why they aren't fit and as fit as they could be in the gym, why they're not achieving their goals, why they're, not helping materialize the life they want. It requires an identity change. And with that identity change comes the habits, comes the
Yeah.
results.
Yeah.
And, you know, that was just a life lesson, weirdly enough, I learned
Mm.
probably in the past month, which really kicked my ass because I was like, I'm instigating all these habits and I'm not really seeing much. I was like, well, yeah, these habits are hard because you really don't want to do them because you're not willing to change some fundamentals.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's your thoughts? And then I think we'll probably have to wrap up soon, given time.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say, like, in terms of that knowing your goal, so say, like, if your goal is to be wherever in 10 years time, okay, so what do you need to do? Because 10 years is a long way away. Even a year is a long way away.
100%.
If you'd have asked us to in 2019 where we thought things were going, and
Yeah.
then the abomination of the last 2 years that has reared its head would have torpedoed quite a lot of those hopes and dreams, plans, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, in terms of that big life goal, well, it's, why not, it's a lot more fun if you're celebrating victories, isn't it? No one ever celebrates a defeat. So why don't you look at going and say, well, what can I do in these, whilst there's daylight, let's work. So what can I do today that's going to work towards achieving the goal in 10 years time?
100%.
What today is a Monday. What's Tuesday's goal? What am I going to do on Tuesday that's going to work towards, so that each day, if you like, each week, you're ticking off a small task that's building you towards the big one.
Yeah, 100%. I can vouch.
Yeah.
I can vouch for that method. Go
Yeah.
on. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, that's it. Because if you can break it down into, not to be kind of micromanaging your own life and nitpicking at things, but just to set yourself wins, like set yourself a daily win and a weekly win and a fortnightly win and a monthly win.
I like that. Yeah.
And you're ticking those things off, because all the time, because in that, one, you're persevering, and two, you're definitely going to have to adapt.
Yeah. And then, but then, even with all those wins and with the plan, if you recognize that the plan is no longer getting you towards that goal, you will know with absolute certainty it's time to throw in the towel, and you're not going to feel awful for it. You'll know that it's going to be that tactical retreat to then make a greater advance in the future.
I don't know who said it, but a famous general from history is, no plan survives first contact with the enemy.
Yes, 100%.
And so, you can have a great plan, but actually, and I mean this in the most loving way possible, the enemy is just real life. It's just stuff happens, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, your plan is now in tatters because you've made first contact with the enemy. So now adapt and persevere, but give yourself little wins,
I like it,
because then you've got something to celebrate, something to be happy about. And it also breaks this thing down from being this massive thing that you want to achieve to be something that's much more manageable because you're doing something today.
Yeah, 100%. Because it makes it from this large, seemingly impossible task into much more manageable small chunks to complete.
Exactly.
And I'll give my own method. Personally, I use what's called like a battle planner from the Order of Man. So if you check that out, he's the battle planner is a pretty useful tool. I've used it for the past couple of years.
Cool.
Simple, complete a simple task every day towards a greater goal at the end of the quarter. So I have 4 battle plans a year. Personally, works for me. May not work for
Awesome.
you. Pick whatever works for you, but it's exactly what you just described, Nathan. So yeah, that's whatever you need to do to achieve your goal, you do it. But I feel like those free things are the best that the audience
Yeah.
can take away.
Yeah.
I feel like though with
Agreed.
the third, I feel like with the third option though, you're only going to get that through life experience. So as I've said in the podcast before, go out and take more calculated risks, especially in your early 20s.
Yeah. Messy action.
Take messy action. Feel forward. There was another one. But yeah, man, we have been chatting for just under 1 hour, I believe.
A new record.
I know. With the intro and outro, maybe who knows? This could be our first ever episode we actually get on the hour. I know this seems. I don't know. This is a weird goal we set ourselves to have exactly a 1 hour episode. But yeah, man.
Excellent.
I actually meant to do this at the start of the episode, but completely forgot. I just want to say congratulations on the launch of your podcast, and I'm thoroughly enjoying it. Even though I don't necessarily subscribe to the ideas, I'm thoroughly enjoying it. So
Thank you very much.
do check out Nathan's podcast, No Wet Fish, which has recently launched, folks. And yes, I want to
Available
say
almost everywhere.
almost everywhere. I know a good mutual friend of ours has demanded that it be set on YouTube at the earliest opportunity.
Yeah.
We'll wait and see.
FPD.
FPD. But Nathan, once again, thank you so much, brother, for coming on and sharing your wisdom and just, having a laugh as well. I always enjoy chatting with you, brother.
Thank you for having me on, as always. Thank you.